Hey everyone, tonight we're exploring the paradox of Maya Jade economies where the most precious stones were destined for darkness. Before we settle in, take a moment to like this if you enjoy these contemplative historical journeys, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love how our global community comes together to explore these profound questions about value and meaning. Now get comfortable, dim those lights. Tonight, we're not chasing dramatic conquests or heroic tales. Instead, we're going to examine something much quieter but equally remarkable, an economy built around objects meant to disappear forever into cenotes, tombs, and ritual fires. Let's begin our gentle journey into the sacred geography of Jade. Picture, if you will, the misty highlands of Guatemala at dawn, where serpentine rock formations twist through ancient mountain valleys. Here, in the geological heart of Mesoamerica, jade formed over millions of years through tectonic pressures that would one day create the foundation of Maya civilization itself. The Maya called this precious green stone yaksh, the color of new corn sprouting, young leaves unfurling, and life-giving water flowing. But this was no ordinary economy of accumulation and display. This was something far more complex and beautiful, a system where the highest expression of wealth was its ritual destruction, where the most valuable objects were those that would never be seen again once they sank into sacred waters or were sealed in royal tombs. Tonight, we'll explore how the Maya created an entire economic system around this paradox, where master craftsmen spent months creating jade objects destined for darkness, where merchants carried precious cargo along forest paths knowing it would be offered to the gods, and where rulers measured their power not by what they kept, but by what they could afford to give away forever. We'll discover how jade workshops operated like sacred spaces, how trade networks carried both goods and spiritual power across vast distances, and how the very act of destroying wealth became the foundation of Maya concepts of cosmic balance and renewal. In the misty highlands of Guatemala, where morning fog clings to ancient mountain slopes like whispered prayers, the earth holds secrets that shaped one of humanity's most profound economic systems. Here, in the serpentine valleys carved by geological forces older than memory, jade deposits rest within rock formations twisted by millennia of tectonic movement. The Maya understood these green stones not merely as minerals, but as crystallized life force itself, yaksh, the sacred color of new corn shoots pushing through dark earth, of young ceiba leaves unfurling toward dawn, of precious water reflecting sky. The geological story of Maya jade begins deep within the Earth's restless heart, where the Caribbean and North American tectonic plates meet along the Mogollon Valley fault zone. Here, under immense pressure and heat, ordinary minerals transformed into jadeite and nephrite, their molecular structures reorganizing into the dense, luminous green stone that would become the foundation of sacred commerce. The Maya saw in this transformation a mirror of their own spiritual understanding, ordinary matter elevated through divine process into something eternal and powerful. Modern geological surveys reveal that these jade deposits formed through a complex dance of subduction and metamorphism, as oceanic crust descended beneath continental margins, carrying with it the chemical components that would crystallize into jade. But the Maya perceived this process through different eyes, understanding jade as the bones of the earth itself, the skeletal structure of mountains made visible through careful extraction. They recognized that jade's hardness, ranking between 6 and 7 on the Mohs scale, represented not merely physical durability, but spiritual permanence, a quality that made it suitable for objects intended to bridge the temporal and eternal realms. The discovery of jade sources during the pre-classic period, sometime before 1000 BCE, marked a pivotal moment in Mesoamerican cultural development. Archaeological evidence from sites like La Democracy and Gayton suggests But early Maya communities recognized jade's significance almost immediately, developing sophisticated techniques for locating deposits within the complex geological matrix of the highlands. They learned to read the landscape itself, identifying the specific rock formations and mineral associations that indicated jade's presence beneath the surface. The extraction process required not only technical skill, but profound spiritual preparation. Maya quarriers understood that they were entering into relationship with living stone, and their work began with ritual offerings to the mountain spirits who guarded these precious deposits. They would burn copal incense at dawn, allowing its sweet smoke to carry prayers into the mist-shrouded valleys. The actual quarrying involved following jade veins deep into mountain hearts, using stone hammers and wooden wedges to carefully extract the precious material without damaging its essential structure. Working by torchlight in narrow tunnels, quarriers developed an intimate understanding of jade's natural properties. They learned to distinguish between different grades of material, recognizing that the finest jade possessed a particular luminosity quality they described as inner light that seemed to glow from within the stone itself. This understanding went beyond mere aesthetic appreciation. It reflected a sophisticated knowledge of jade's crystalline structure and the way light interacted with its dense molecular arrangement. The Maya recognized several varieties of jade, each with distinct properties and spiritual associations. The most prized was imperial jade, with its deep, translucent green color that seemed to hold captured sunlight. Slightly less valuable, but still highly regarded, was apple jade, with its lighter, more opaque green hue. They also worked with white jade and lavender jade, understanding that each variety carried different spiritual properties and was appropriate for different ritual contexts. The relationship between jade's physical properties and its spiritual significance reveals the sophisticated Maya understanding of material culture. Jade's exceptional hardness meant that objects carved from it would endure for generations, making it ideal for items intended to carry ancestral power across time. Its cool touch against warm skin created a sensory experience that reinforced its association with water and the underworld, while its resistance to weathering symbolized permanence in a world of constant change. The quarrying sites themselves became sacred landscapes marked by generations of ritual activity. Offerings of flowers, food, and precious objects accumulated around jade deposits, creating a complex archaeology of spiritual exchange. The Maya understood that taking jade from the earth required reciprocal giving, and they developed elaborate protocols for maintaining balance between human need and natural abundance. As jade extraction expanded during the Classic period, these highland communities developed sophisticated systems for managing their precious resource. They established seasonal quarrying schedules that respected both geological realities and ritual calendars, understanding that certain times of year were more propitious for entering the Earth's sacred spaces. The work was dangerous, requiring miners to navigate unstable rock formations and potential cave-ins, but it was also deeply meaningful, connecting human labor to cosmic processes. The transformation of raw jade into objects of power began in these mountain workshops, where skilled artisans first assessed each piece of stone. They would hold jade fragments up to the light, feeling for internal flaws and natural lines of cleavage that would guide their work. This initial evaluation required years of training to develop, as artisans learned to read jade's inner structure through touch, sound, and visual inspection. The geological complexity of jade deposits meant that no two pieces were identical, requiring artisans to adapt their techniques to each stone's unique properties. Some jade was suitable for large ceremonial objects, while other pieces were better suited for delicate jewelry or small ritual items. This natural variation became part of jade's spiritual significance, as the Maya understood that each stone carried its own individual essence and potential. The transformation of raw jade into objects of profound spiritual and economic significance unfolded in workshops that hummed with quiet, meditative activity throughout the Maya world. These spaces of creation existed in a realm between the earthly and divine, where master craftsmen guided apprentices through the slow, contemplative process of revealing the sacred forms hidden within green stone. The workshops themselves reflected the Maya understanding that true craftsmanship required not merely technical skill, but a deep spiritual communion with the materials and their cosmic significance. In the pre-dawn hours, when the tropical air still held the coolness of night, jade workers would begin their daily ritual of preparation. The workshops, typically located within palace complexes or specialized craft quarters, were designed to capture the gentle morning light that would illuminate their work throughout the day. Clay oil lamps flickered against stone walls, casting dancing shadows that seemed to breathe life into the jade pieces arranged on low wooden tables. The craftsmen would first examine each piece of raw jade, running their fingers along its surface, feeling for the natural lines and inclusions that would guide their work. The relationship between artisan and stone was fundamentally different from the mechanical processes we might imagine today. Maya jade workers understood their role not as imposing form upon resistant material, but as collaborating with the stone to reveal its inherent nature. This philosophy required years of training that began in childhood, when young apprentices would spend months simply learning to feel the subtle variations in jade's density and grain. They would practice on lesser stones, developing the sensitivity needed to work with jade's extraordinary hardness while respecting its spiritual essence. The tools of jade working reflected this delicate balance between human intention and natural resistance. Since jade ranks between 6.5 and 7 on the Moss hardness scale, making it harder than steel, Maya craftsmen developed ingenious techniques using materials available in their environment. Obsidian blades, sharper than modern surgical instruments, served for initial shaping and detailed carving. Bamboo tools, hardened by fire and fitted with abrasive pastes made from crushed jade dust and sand, allowed for precise grinding and polishing. The sound of these tools at work created a gentle, rhythmic percussion that became the heartbeat of the workshop. Water played a crucial role in the jade working process, both practically and symbolically. The craftsmen would work with small gourds of water nearby, constantly dampening their tools and the jade surface to prevent overheating and to wash away stone dust. This constant interaction with water reinforced jade's association with life, giving moisture and agricultural fertility. The Maya believed that jade held the essence of water itself, and the workshop process honored this connection through careful attention to humidity and temperature. The organization of jade workshops reflected broader Maya social structures while maintaining their own specialized hierarchies. Master craftsmen, known by titles that emphasized their spiritual as well as technical authority, oversaw workshops that might employ dozens of workers at different skill levels. These masters had typically spent decades perfecting their craft, learning not only the technical aspects of jade working, but also the ritual protocols that governed when on how certain types of objects could be created. They understood the cosmic calendar and knew which days were auspicious for beginning work on royal regalia or sacred offerings. Apprentices in these workshops followed a carefully structured progression that could span many years. They began by preparing tools and materials, learning to mix abrasive pastes and maintain the proper consistency of water for different stages of work. Gradually, they would be allowed to work on simpler pieces, beads, and small ornaments that would serve as practice pieces and eventually enter the broader jade economy. The most talented apprentices might eventually be permitted to work on the intricate details of complex pieces under close supervision, learning to carve the delicate features of jade masks or the elaborate glyphs that adorn ceremonial objects. The workshop environment fostered a meditative approach to creation that aligned with Maya spiritual practices. The slow, repetitive motions required for jade working, the gentle grinding, the careful polishing, the patient revelation of form created a trance-like state that craftsmen understood as necessary for producing objects of spiritual power. They believed that jade objects created in haste or without proper spiritual preparation would lack the vital force necessary for their ritual functions. Regional variations in workshop organization reflected the diverse landscape of Maya civilization. In highland areas near jade sources, workshops might specialize in initial processing and rough shaping, taking advantage of their proximity to raw materials. Lowland workshops, often associated with major ceremonial centers, focused on fine carving and finishing work, creating the elaborate pieces that would serve in royal ceremonies and elite burials. These regional specializations created networks of exchange and cooperation that linked jade workers across the Maya world. The economic implications of jade workshop organization were profound. The long training periods required to produce skilled craftsmen meant that jade working represented a significant investment in human capital. Master craftsmen commanded high status and substantial compensation, often receiving not only material rewards, but also special privileges and protection from rulers who depended on their skills. The workshops themselves became centers of innovation, where new techniques and styles developed through the patient experimentation of generations of craftsmen. The transformation of raw jade into finished objects thus represented far more than mere manufacturing. It embodied the Maya understanding of how human skill and spiritual insight could collaborate with natural forces to create objects of lasting power and beauty. In these quiet workshops, where the gentle sounds of stone against stone marked the passage of time, the Maya created not just objects of economic value, but tangible expressions of their deepest beliefs about the relationship between the material and spiritual worlds. The gentle transformation of jade from sacred stone to medium of exchange reveals one of the most fascinating paradoxes in human economic history. In the quiet courtyards of Maya palaces, where morning light filtered through cecropia leaves, jade objects served simultaneously as currency and as vessels for the divine breath of life itself. This dual nature created an economy unlike any other in the ancient world, where monetary value and spiritual power flowed together like the convergence of two sacred rivers. The standardization of jade as currency began slowly, almost imperceptibly, during the Middle Pre-Classic period. Archaeological evidence from sites like Komi, Lj, Uyu and Chalkuapa suggests that jade beads were being produced in remarkably consistent sizes and weights, indicating their use as standardized units of exchange. These small, perfectly round beads, often no larger than a grain of modern corn, carried within their green depths the accumulated labor of quarrying, transport, and skilled craftsmanship. A single bead might represent weeks of work, yet its value extended far beyond mere economic calculation. The Maya developed sophisticated systems for evaluating jade's monetary worth based on factors that European minds would later struggle to comprehend. Size mattered, certainly, but so did the stone's translucency, its particular shade of green, and most importantly, its spiritual resonance. Master appraisers, often priests trained in both economic and ritual knowledge, would hold jade objects to the light, feeling for the stone's inner life force. The most valuable pieces seemed to glow with an inner fire, their green depths suggesting the eternal vitality of growing maize and flowing water. In the bustling marketplaces of Tikal and Karakol, jade beads served as high-value currency alongside cacao beans and obsidian blades. Merchants carried jade in specially woven pouches, the stones clicking softly together with each step along forest paths. The sound itself became associated with wealth and status, a gentle percussion that announced the approach of prosperity. Exchange rates fluctuated based on seasonal availability, political stability, and the ritual calendar. During important ceremonies, when Jade's spiritual value peaked, its monetary worth might triple overnight. The paradox deepened when considering that much of this jade wealth was destined for ritual destruction. Palace treasuries accumulated vast quantities of jade objects, their inventories carefully recorded on bark paper codices, yet these same objects were regularly removed for ceremonial offerings. The economic logic seemed to defy conventional understanding. Why create wealth only to cast it into cenotes or bury it with the dead? The answer lay in Maya concepts of reciprocity and cosmic balance, where the destruction of earthly wealth generated spiritual capital in the divine realm. Royal courts developed elaborate protocols for Jade's dual role as currency and offering medium. Tribute payments often included specific quantities of jade beads, their value calculated against other goods in complex exchange matrices. These same beads might later be restrung into ceremonial regalia, worn once in a royal ritual, then broken apart and scattered as offerings to ensure the kingdom's continued prosperity. The jade thus circulated through multiple economic spheres, accumulating value and meaning with each transformation. The seasonal rhythms of jade trade reflected deeper patterns in Maya economic thought. During the dry season, when travel was easier and agricultural work lighter, jade moved along established trade routes in great quantities. Merchants timed their journeys to arrive in major centers during important festivals, when demand for jade reached its peak. The wet season brought different patterns as jade accumulated in palace treasuries and workshop inventories, awaiting the next cycle of circulation. Regional variations in jade valuation created opportunities for skilled traders who understood local preferences. The jade prized in highland Guatemala might be considered inferior in the Piton lowlands, where different spiritual traditions emphasized other qualities. A merchant might exchange highland jade for lowland cacao, then trade the cacao for coastal salt, creating complex chains of value transformation that span the entire Maya world. The integration of jade into tribute systems reveals how sacred currencies could serve state functions. Vassal rulers paid tribute partly in jade, acknowledging both their political subordination and their participation in shared spiritual traditions. These tribute payments were carefully calculated to demonstrate submission without completely depleting local jade reserves, maintaining the delicate balance between political obligation and economic survival. The currency of the sacred thus created an economy where destruction and creation, wealth and offering, material value and spiritual power flowed together in endless cycles. In the soft light of dawn, as merchants prepared their jade-laden caravans for another journey through the forest, they participated in an economic system that transformed the Earth's geological gifts into bridges between the human and divine realms. The ancient pathways that carried jade across the Maya world were millennia trade routes. They were arteries of connection that pulsed with the rhythms of seasonal ceremony and cosmic obligation. These networks, established over millennia of patient exploration and relationship building, created a circulation system that moved not just precious green stone, but ideas, innovations, and the very essence of Maya civilization itself through the diverse landscapes of Mesoamerica. From the misty highlands of Guatemala, where jade lay hidden in serpentine veins, these routes descended through cloud forests and river valleys, following natural corridors that had been worn smooth by countless generations of traders. The principal arteries flowed eastward toward the great ceremonial centers of the Piton, northward through the limestone plains of the Yucatan, and southward along the Pacific coastal plain. Each route carried its own rhythm, its own seasonal patterns of movement that synchronized with the agricultural calendar and the ceremonial obligations of distant cities. The merchants who traveled these paths were not merely traders in the modern sense, but ritual specialists who understood that jade's movement through the landscape was itself a sacred act. They carried with them the knowledge of proper protocols, the ability to read the subtle signs that indicated safe passage, and the diplomatic skills necessary to navigate the complex web of political relationships that governed interregional exchange. Their caravans moved with deliberate care, for they carried not just economic value, but the concentrated spiritual power of the earth itself. Along the riverine routes that wound through the dense rainforests of the lowlands, specialized water traders developed techniques for transporting jade and took advantage of the natural flow of seasonal floods. During the rainy season, when rivers swelled and became navigable highways, flotillas of dugout canoes would carry carefully wrapped jade objects downstream, their hulls riding low in the dark water. The traders knew every bend and rapid, every seasonal variation in water level, and they timed their journeys to arrive at major centers during the most propitious ceremonial periods. The overland routes required different skills and different forms of organization. Merchant groups, often organized along kinship lines, would assemble their caravans at the beginning of the dry season when forest paths became passable and the risk of ambush decreased. These expeditions moved with the measured pace of a religious procession, stopping at designated way stations where local rulers provided protection in exchange for tribute and trade goods. The jade itself was carried in specially woven baskets, each piece wrapped in soft cotton cloth and cushioned with aromatic herbs that would help preserve the stone's spiritual potency during the long journey. The establishment of these trading networks required generations of patient relationship building and the development of complex systems of mutual obligation. Local rulers along the routes provided security and provisioning in exchange for access to jade, the exotic goods that traveled with it. This created a web of interdependence that helped maintain peace across vast distances, for disrupting trade meant cutting off access to the materials necessary for proper ritual observance and political legitimacy. At key points along these routes, permanent trading centers emerged where merchants from different regions could meet and exchange goods in neutral territory. These markets operated according to carefully negotiated protocols that ensured fair dealing and prevented conflicts between rival trading groups. The timing of these gatherings was oft unsynchronized with major ceremonial cycles, creating festivals of exchange that combined economic activity with religious observance and diplomatic negotiation. The seasonal nature of jade circulation created rhythms that synchronized distant communities with the cosmic cycles that governed Maya life. During certain periods, jade would flow primarily toward the great ceremonial centers in preparation for major festivals and dedication ceremonies. At other times, the flow would reverse as jade objects, having fulfilled their ritual purposes, were redistributed to smaller communities or transformed into new forms through careful reworking by skilled artisans. The information that traveled with jade was often as valuable as the stone itself. Merchants carried news of political developments, reports of astronomical observations, and knowledge of new techniques and innovations. This flow of information helped maintain the cultural coherence of Maya civilization across vast distances and diverse environments. The jade trade networks thus served as the nervous system of Maya society, carrying the signals that coordinated religious observances, political alliances, and economic activities across the entire region. As these networks matured, they developed their own internal logic and momentum. The roots became so well established that they persisted even during periods of political upheaval, maintained by the merchant communities who had invested generations in their development. The jade continued to flow, carrying with it the accumulated wisdom of countless journeys and the patient labor of those who had devoted their lives to maintaining these ancient pathways of connection and exchange. The most profound paradox of Maya jade economy reveals itself in the quiet moments before dawn, when priests prepared for ceremonies that would transform precious wealth into spiritual offerings. In the cooled darkness of temple chambers, jade objects that had required months of careful crafting that had traveled hundreds of miles through dangerous forests that represented the accumulated wealth of entire communities would be prepared for their final transformation not into more wealth, but into gifts for the gods, offerings to ancestors, and bridges between the world of the living and the realm of the sacred. This ritual economy of destruction operated on principles that would seem counterintuitive to modern economic thinking, yet it formed the beating heart of my civilization for over 2 millennia. The very jade that served as currency in marketplaces, that marked social status in royal courts, that facilitated long-distance trade across Mesoamerica, was simultaneously destined for ritual consumption to be buried with the dead, cast into sacred cenotes, or sealed within temple foundations where human eyes would never see it again. The archaeological record speaks eloquently of the systematic transformation of economic value into spiritual currency. At the sacred cenote of Chichen Itza, divers have recovered thousands of jade objects thrown into the dark waters as offerings to the rain god Chai Si. These were not broken or discarded pieces, but carefully crafted ornaments, ceremonial bars, and ritual implements that represented substantial wealth. Each object that sank into those mysterious depths carried with it not just its material value, but the prayers, hopes, and spiritual investments of the communities that offered them. The preparation for such offerings followed elaborate protocols that transformed the act of destruction into a full of creation. In palace workshops, artisans would spend additional time polishing jade objects destined for ritual use, ensuring that the gods would receive only the finest work. The very knowledge that a piece was intended for offering seemed to inspire craftsmen to greater heights of artistic achievement, as if the temporary nature of the object's earthly existence demanded eternal beauty. The economic logic of this system rested on my concepts of reciprocity that extended far beyond human relationships to encompass the entire cosmos. Just as farmers offered the first fruits of their harvest to ensure continued fertility, and as communities provided labor for temple construction to maintain cosmic order, the offering of jade wealth was understood as an investment in the fundamental stability of the universe. The destruction of valuable objects was not waste, but rather the highest form of economic activity, the transformation of earthly wealth into divine favor. Royal burials provide perhaps the most dramatic examples of this ritual economy in action. When a Maya ruler died, jade objects worth the equivalent of years of tribute from subject communities would be placed in the tomb. The jade funeral mask of Kinich and A. Epak Alad Palignu, composed of over 200 individual pieces, represented not just the wealth of a single ruler, but the accumulated jade resources of an entire kingdom. Yet this masterpiece of Maya art was created specifically to be sealed away from human sight, to accompany the ruler on his journey to the underworld. The seasonal rhythms of Maya ritual life created predictable patterns in this economy of destruction. During the dry season, when agricultural work was minimal and trade routes were most accessible, communities would accumulate jade wealth through market exchange and tribute collection. Then, as the rains approached and the crucial planting season began, elaborate ceremonies would transform much of this accumulated wealth into offerings designed to ensure agricultural success. The jade that had circulated as currency during the dry months would sink into cenote waters or disappear into temple caches, completing a cycle that linked economic activity to cosmic renewal. This pattern created a unique form of economic circulation where wealth was not simply accumulated, but continuously transformed. Unlike systems where precious objects might be hoarded across generations, Maya jade economy operated on principles of periodic renewal that prevented the indefinite concentration of wealth. The ritual destruction of jade objects served as a form of economic redistribution, ensuring that wealth flowed not just horizontally through trade networks, but vertically through the layers of cosmic reality. The psychological and social dimensions of this system reveal themselves in the careful attention paid to the moment of offering itself. Witnesses describe the solemnity with which jade objects were prepared for their final transformation, the prayers and incantations that accompanied their dedication, the profound sense of loss and renewal that marked their passage from the human to the divine realm. These were not casual acts of disposal, but carefully orchestrated transformations that required the presence of the entire community to validate their spiritual significance. The ritual economy of jade destruction also created its own specialized roles and institutions. Certain priests became experts in the proper protocols for different types of offerings, while others specialized in the divination necessary to determine which objects the gods desired. Markets developed not just for jade objects intended for earthly use, but for those specifically crafted for ritual consumption, creating a parallel economy that operated according to spiritual rather than material logic. This system of ritual destruction and renewal offers profound insights into Maya understanding of wealth, value, and the relationship between material and spiritual realms. In the quiet moments when jade objects disappeared into cenote waters or were sealed within temple walls, the Maya were not destroying wealth, but transforming it, not wasting resources, but investing them in the cosmic order that sustained all earthly prosperity. The gentle splash of jade hitting sacred water, the soft sound of tombstones being sealed, the whispered prayers that accompanied these transformations, these were the sounds of an economy that understood wealth not as an end in itself, but as a means of maintaining the delicate balance between human needs and divine favor. The weight of jade against skin carried meanings that extended far beyond mere ornamentation, creating invisible threads that bound individuals to their communities, their ancestors, and their place within the carefully ordered cosmos of Maya society. In the gentle morning light filtering through palace courtyards, we can imagine the quiet ceremony of a young noble receiving their first jade ear flares, the cool stone marking not just their passage into adulthood, but their formal entry into the complex web of relationships that defined Maya's social existence. The jade workshops of Köpen and Paliknu produced objects that functioned as more than luxury goods or symbols of wealth. Each carved pendant, each polished bead, each intricately worked mask carried within its green depths the accumulated weight of social identity, political legitimacy, and spiritual protection. The master craftsmen who shaped these objects understood that they were not merely working stone, but crafting the very foundations of social order, creating tangible links between the earthly realm of human politics and the eternal realm of divine authority. Regional variations in jade use reveal the subtle ways in which different Maya communities negotiated their relationships with power and identity. In the highlands of Guatemala, where jade sources lay closest to hand, the stone carried particular associations with mountain spirits and the life-giving forces of water. Here, jade objects often incorporated motifs of lightning and rain, connecting their wearers to the fundamental forces that sustained agricultural life. The skilled artisans of Kamine LJ UYU developed distinctive styles that emphasized jade's natural translucency, creating objects that seemed to glow with inner light when held against the sun. Moving north into the Petan lowlands, jade took on different meanings while maintaining its essential role as marker of social position. At Tikal and Calicut, the great tribal cities of the classic period, jade regalia became increasingly elaborate as rulers competed for legitimacy and divine favor. The famous jade mask of Yosorchin Kowe Il, discovered in his Jamat Tikal, represents not just artistic achievement, but a complex statement about royal identity and the relationship between earthly kingship and divine authority. Each piece of jade in the mask's construction had been carefully selected not only for its beauty, but for its symbolic resonance, creating a composite image that transformed the deceased ruler into an eternal ancestor. The transmission of jade objects across generations created material links between past and present that reinforced social continuity while allowing for gradual change. A jade picture worn by a ruler might be passed to his successor, carrying with it not just the weight of office, but the accumulated spiritual power of previous reigns. These objects became repositories of dynastic memory, their surfaces worn smooth by generations of handling, their meanings deepened by each ceremonial use. The careful documentation of jade inheritance in my hieroglyphic texts reveals a society deeply concerned with maintaining proper relationships between the living and the dead, between human authority and divine sanction. Women's relationships with jade objects followed different patterns but carried equal significance in the construction of social identity. The elaborate jade jewelry found in elite women's burials at sites like Calicum and Palaknu suggests that feminine jade regalia served not merely as decoration, but as markers of political alliance and reproductive power. The jade goddess figurines found throughout the Maya world indicate that women's jade objects carried particular associations with fertility, lunar cycles, and the life-giving properties of water. These objects created networks of meaning that connected individual women to broader cosmic forces while marking their specific roles within elite society. The political dimensions of jade possession extended beyond individual identity to encompass broader questions of legitimacy and divine sanction. Rulers who could command access to the finest jade objects demonstrated not only their economic power, but their ability to maintain proper relationships with the supernatural forces that governed Maya existence. The jade regalia worn during accession ceremonies, warfare rituals, and seasonal celebrations served as visible proof of divine approval, their green luminescence reflecting the eternal vitality that flowed through properly constituted authority. Children's jade objects reveal the careful processes through which Maya society reproduced itself across generations. The tiny jade beads found in infant burials at sites like Karakol and Köpen indicate that social identity began to be constructed from birth, with jade objects serving as protective amulets while simultaneously marking the child's place within the social hierarchy. The gradual accumulation of jade objects through childhood and adolescence created material biographies that paralleled the development of social personhood, each new piece marking important transitions in the individual's relationship to community and cosmos. The jade objects found in non-elite contexts suggest that the stone's identity marking functions extended beyond the highest levels of society, though in more modest forms. Simple jade beads and small carved pendants found in middle-class burials indicate that jade's power to create and maintain social identity operated across multiple levels of Maya society, adapted to different economic circumstances while maintaining its essential symbolic functions. These objects remind us that the jade economy was not merely an elite phenomenon, but a complex system that touched the lives of many Maya people, creating shared understandings of value and meaning that transcended social boundaries. The continuing presence of jade in modern Maya communities demonstrates the enduring power of these ancient identity-making processes, adapted to contemporary circumstances while maintaining their essential functions in creating connections between individuals, communities, and the sacred forces that govern human existence. The transformation of Maya jade economies during the twilight of the classic period reveals patterns as enduring as the stone itself. In the great cities of the 8th and 9th centuries, jade workshops that had hummed with quiet activity for generations began to fall silent, their master craftsmen scattering like seeds on the wind. Yet this was not simply an ending, but rather another turn in the eternal cycle, as jade had always embodied the constant transformation between creation and dissolution, between the material and the sacred. Archaeological evidence from sites like Köpen and Palaknu suggests that jade working continued even as political centers collapsed around them. In the final decades of these cities, artisans created some of their most exquisite pieces, as if pouring their cultural essence into imperishable stone. These late works often show a desperate beauty, a crystallization of centuries of accumulated knowledge into objects that would outlast the civilizations that created them. The jade masks of Kinich Jene, Ipakala Peliknu, crafted in the 7th century, seem to anticipate this transformation, their serene faces gazing eternally inward, while the world around them shifted and changed. The Spanish conquest brought a profound disruption to Jade's sacred economy, though not in the ways one might expect. Colonial documents reveal Spanish bewilderment at indigenous reverence for what they saw as mere green stones. Where Maya eyes saw crystallized life force, Spanish eyes saw only decorative curiosities inferior to gold and silver. This fundamental misunderstanding created a strange protective shield around jade traditions. While Spanish authorities systematically destroyed gold objects and melted them into bullion, jade pieces were often overlooked or dismissed as worthless trinkets. In the colonial period, jade working retreated into hidden spaces, practiced in remote communities where ancient knowledge could be preserved untransmitted. Indigenous artisans developed new techniques for concealing their work, creating pieces that appeared to Spanish eyes as simple ornaments while maintaining their full spiritual significance for Maya communities. This period of concealment paradoxically preserved jade traditions more effectively than open practice might have done, creating underground networks of knowledge that would persist for centuries. The survival of jade traditions in modern Maya communities reveals the profound resilience of sacred economies. In highland Guatemala, near the ancient jade sources, contemporary artisans still work the stone using techniques that would be recognizable to their ancestors. They speak of jade as a living material, describing how each piece must be approached with patience and respect. The stone itself guides the carving, they explain, revealing its inner nature through careful attention to its grain and color variations. Modern jade workers often describe their relationship with the stone in terms that echo ancient Maya concepts. They speak of jade as containing its own spirit, requiring ritual preparation before working and offering thanks after completion. These contemporary practices suggest that the spiritual dimensions of jade working weren't ever simply cultural additions to an economic activity, but rather fundamental aspects of how humans relate to this particular material. The transformation of jade's role in modern Maya identity demonstrates how sacred economies adapt while maintaining their essential character. While ancient jade objects commanded tribute and mark-troil status, contemporary jade pieces serve different but related functions. They connect modern Maya people to their ancestral traditions, serving as tangible links to a cultural heritage that survived conquest and colonization. Young Maya people learning traditional jade working often describe the experience as a form of cultural reclamation, a way of touching the wisdom of their ancestors through the medium of stone. Museums worldwide now house thousands of Maya jade objects removed from their original contexts but still radiating the quiet power that made them sacred. These pieces, displayed behind glass, continue to teach about the civilization that created them. Yet they also raise profound questions about the nature of cultural heritage and the relationship between objects and their meanings. Can jade maintain its sacred character when separated from the ritual contexts that gave it life? The answer seems to lie in the stone's own enduring nature. Jade continues to evoke wonder and reverence even in sterile museum environments, suggesting that some forms of sacred power transcend their immediate cultural contexts. The jade economy of the ancient Maya ultimately reveals truths about human nature that extend far beyond any single civilization. It demonstrates how material objects can become vehicles for spiritual expression, how economic systems can serve sacred purposes, and how the transformation of raw materials into meaningful objects reflects deeper human needs for connection with the divine. In the quiet persistence of jade traditions through centuries of change, we glimpse something eternal about the human relationship with the sacred, something as enduring as the green stone. that has witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations while remaining forever unchanged in its essential nature. As we reach the gentle conclusion of our journey through the Maya Jade economy, we find ourselves contemplating a profound truth that emerges like morning mist from the depths of time. The Maya understanding of Jade reveals something timeless about the human relationship with value, meaning, and the sacred transformation of earthly materials into vessels of spiritual significance. In the quiet workshops where ancient artisans shaped jade by lamplight, we discover a meditation on patience and reverence that transcends centuries. The slow, methodical grinding of stone against stone created not merely objects of beauty, but bridges between the material and spiritual realms. Each jade bead, each carved mask, each ceremonial ornament carried within its green depths the accumulated wisdom of geological ages and human devotion. The paradox of the Maya Jade economy, creating objects of immense value only to offer them to the waters of sacred cenotes or place them in the silence of tombs, speaks to a profound understanding that true wealth lies not in accumulation but in circulation, not in possession but in offering. The jade that sank into dark cenote waters carried with it the prayers and hopes of entire communities, transforming economic value into spiritual currency that enriched the cosmos itself. As we reflect on the merchants who carried jade along forest paths, the rulers who wore jade regalia as symbols of divine authority, and the craftsmen who understood, begin to sense the deep rhythms of an economy that recognized no separation between the sacred and the secular. The jade trade networks that connected highland quarries to colonial centers were more than commercial routes. They were arteries of meaning, carrying not just precious stones but the very essence of Maya cosmological understanding. The transformation of raw jade into objects of power mirrors our own journey of understanding as we have slowly polished our comprehension of this remarkable civilization through patient contemplation. Like the Maya artisans who felt for the natural lines within the stone, we have learned to perceive the hidden structures of meaning within their economic and spiritual systems. In the eternal green of jade, we find a color that speaks of life's continuity, the green of new corn shoots, of young leaves unfurling, of precious water reflecting forest light. This green connects us to the cyclical nature of existence, where death and rebirth, offering and renewal, destruction and creation flow together in an endless dance of transformation. The quiet wisdom of jade teaches us that some forms of wealth can only be truly possessed by being given away, that some values can only be preserved by being transformed. In the Maya world, jade was not merely a commodity, but a living substance that carried the breath of the earth itself, connecting human communities to the deeper rhythms of cosmic order. As we allow these insights to settle gently into our consciousness, we can imagine ourselves in one of those ancient workshops, feeling the smooth coolness of jade beneath our fingers, sensing the patience required to transform raw stone into sacred art. The soft sound of grinding, the gentle rhythm of creation, the meditative focus required for such delicate work, all of these elements combine to create a space of profound peace and concentration. Let your breathing slow and deepen as you contemplate the eternal nature of jade, how it has witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations while maintaining its essential character. Feel yourself sinking gently into the same timeless rhythm that guided Maya artisans through their patient work, each breath bringing you deeper into harmony with the ancient wisdom of stone and spirit. In this peaceful space of understanding, where economic systems reveal themselves as expressions of deeper spiritual truths, allow yourself to rest in the quiet knowledge that human societies have always sought to transform the material world into vessels of meaning and beauty. The jade economy of the Maya continues to speak to us across the centuries, offering its gentle wisdom about value, sacrifice, and the sacred nature of human creativity. Rest now in the eternal green light of jade, feeling yourself connected to the timeless rhythms of earth and spirit. As consciousness settles into the peaceful depths, where all understanding becomes one with the gentle, enduring wisdom of stone.